Hi, and thank you for joining me. I'm going to be making one of our favorite desserts. It's called Frozen Blueberry Delight. I'm going to start with the walnuts because they're probably the hardest to chop up, and I'm using a food processor, and I dump 1 cup of the walnuts in here, 1 cup of coconut, and that's just the dry flaked coconut, not sweetened, and 1.5 cups of oats. These are the quick oats. You can use whole oats. And then I'm going to put in about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And as I blend it, I'm going to add about 1/3 cup of honey. Okay, now it mixes it for you and everything. It's very nice. I really like my food processor. Then you take your crust and you dump it in a casserole dish. I have lightly oiled it with a spray. And then you pat it down to make it a nice crust, but not too hard, just lightly pat. And then we're going to bake this at 375 for about 8-9 minutes. I check on it about 8 and make sure that it's not getting too dark too fast. But you want it to be a little crusty and a little brown, lightly brown. Okay, and it's ready for the oven. Now the crust is finished. Again, we're going to start with the nuts. And if you have a Vitamix, great. If you don't, you'll probably want to blend a little longer. But I usually blend anywhere between 1 and 1.5 minutes and get it nice and smooth and creamy. I'm going to start with the cashews. We're going to add a can of coconut milk. And then I'm going to take some, you can use almond milk, soy milk, and add another can of liquid to this. Make sure you get all of the coconut milk out of the can. If you have a spatula handy, you can scrape the rest of it out. And then we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If you have xanthan gum, that works good because it makes it smooth and creamy. And I'm not going to put 1/2 teaspoon in. I'm going to put somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of the xanthan. And then I'm going to take, I like to use the powdered vanilla. It doesn't have alcohol in it. And you need 2 teaspoons of the vanilla. It's the same quota as portions as the liquid. If it's a teaspoon of liquid, you use a teaspoon of the powder. I'm going to add 1 cup of honey. And we're going to blend this all up until it's real smooth and creamy. Okay, we're going to blend it for about 1 minute with a Vitamix. It may take 2 or 3 if you have a regular blender. Okay, doesn't that look lovely? almost good enough to eat. Once this is cooled and set, and maybe even frozen slightly, we will pour the blueberry topping on top of that and then put it in the freezer, and I'll show you how to do that next. Okay, now that the crust is nice and cool, we're going to take this filling that we made earlier, and we're going to pour it on here. And then we're going to save some of this back and add blueberries to it, and we'll blend it up. But first of all, we're going to take this and we're going to make it nice and firm by sticking it in the freezer. And then once it's slightly frozen, then we can add this part here. And this part here we will stick in the refrigerator to keep it fresh. Okay, and I'll see you in a few moments. Welcome back as we do the final touches on our frozen blueberry delight. But before we do that, I wanted to show you this book. It's called 7 Secrets, and it's by Jim and Neva Brackett. They have a health retreat in Northeast Washington, and they put together this vegan cookbook. This cookbook is probably the best vegan cookbook I've ever used, and I really appreciate it because if you don't know or you don't have a product, for instance, that's in the recipe, she oftentimes will say, you can use this or you can use that. And I like that. Anyway, the recipe for this filling and the crust, I bounced off of her recipes that are in here. So I use this book a lot, and I just thought I would recommend that book to you. Okay, we are ready to do the final touch. Okay, this was the leftover from what we poured in here. This has been in the freezer for at least a couple of hours, getting nice and set up. You see, it's nice and solid. And we're going to dump a cup of blueberries now into the remaining portion of this topping. And we're going to blend it up until it's nice and purple or blue. Okay, it doesn't need to go a full minute because it's not trying to cream nuts. We're just doing fruit. I've had people ask me what this is made out of, and they always think that this is different than this, and it's the same. But when you add the blueberries, it gives it a little different texture. And it really makes a beautiful dessert. You can wow your friends with this dessert. They'll think that it's a very rich and creamy dessert, and it's actually good for you. It's a healthy dessert. And we like desserts, but we really like them healthy as much as possible. And then I take a spatula and I just make sure it's all even. Now another way you can do this is you can flip-flop these. You can do the blueberry first, and then you can do the white on top. And if you do the white on top, you can decorate it like you would a cake. So if you're creative. I tried it the other way and I'm not creative at all. So I choose to do it this way. And this way to me is a lot simpler. And there we have it. We have the frozen blueberry delight. Come join us and we'll have some together.